Hello, everybody. If you told me a year ago that I would have 1,500 subscribers on my channel and, I'd be, communicating with a lot of people through my channel, I would have probably not believed you. And anyway, this is what's happening. And, I want to thank everybody for joining me and following me. And this message is it's time. Now, I have these conversations all the time with people, and lately, it's coming from all avenues about what is going on in this crazy world. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to share a newsletter that I follow this guy. And this came out of nowhere because never would I have thought he would talk about nutrition. And it sort of ties into this. This is Anthony Stewart. This is Food for Thought. And we're questioning everything they've ever said. And it's starting to become very apparent who they are. And, what I ask you is, what the conversation is quite often is what do we do about it? Well, one thing I can tell you is through my specific journey, my N of one, my experience, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm studying to be a nutritionist, which I have a very big problem with right now. That's for another day. But the more I deep dive into this, the more it's very clear that there is one big problem. And that's the food we're consuming and what they're telling us to eat. Now, you can be on either side of the fence, any way, shape, or form. This involves the human race. This involves everybody. And I think I've been struggling to find what my place is. I'm not... I just want to share this message, and kind of comes into the the Justice League about Flash asking Batman, "What do I do?" And what we have to do, all of us who get it, is just start hammering this message. Share it with one person. If we can save one person, I don't know if you guys notice this. Leave a comment below if you do. But looking around, you see so many people suffering. And it probably needlessly, because they're doing what they're told. And what they're telling them to do is probably not right. So I'm going to get into this newsletter. I stick around to the end because this hits so many levels. And then I'm going to tell you who it is, who said this. And it might shock you, it might surprise you, but to be honest with you now, nothing really ever surprises me. This world is going batshit crazy. And sometimes I feel like I'm the only one who's seeing beyond the veil, so to speak. And one thing I'm going to say before I read this letter, this is very I've been getting into a more spiritual side of things, and I've been reading a lot of the esoteric teachings and, some occult stuff. And I come into it with the open mind like I did with nutrition now. There is relevance in a lot of things. And it's what you piece together and pick out that I think makes it all worth it. And this is one saying that probably will come up a lot of times, and it's the lips of wisdom are closed except for the ears of understanding. And if you really think about what that means, if you're ignorant and you don't want to accept this, that's fine. That's your choice. But listen to this letter. Try and do your own research. I don't want you to do what I do. I want to help people find their own truth, their own way. And giving this information to people, some people won't be able to handle it. Some people are in denial. Some people will call it conspiracy, whatever. You know what? The more people that we hammer this message home, they can start taking control, finding their faith in themselves, and taking the power back. So I'm going to get to the newsletter, and this one might be long, so stick around, and I'll tell you who it is. From the Texas dirt I come, a product of grit and strength, from a pioneering spirit that created me. I have lived a life of blue-collar roots and a high-tech professional career with a special set of skills most people do not have access to. My goal is to expose the industrial food complex for what they are and how they manipulate our laws, poison our food, and create false commodities to increase higher yields, higher profits for global corporations. Several years ago, I embedded myself into a harvesting company from Texas to North Dakota and back again, participating in the wheat and canola rapeseed harvest. I looked farmers in the eyes and asked them direct questions, only to find confusion, fear, and quiet desperation. These people are responsible for feeding you, and what I discovered is that they have no clue who they are dealing with. The enormous machine behind the industrial food complex that is poised to change food in ways the world has never seen nor it is prepared for. This is just the beginning. My intention is to give a broad outline of the national food supply and the global corporations that decide if you eat or if you starve and control your nutrient supply with a push of a button. With over 245,000 acres of farmland, Billy G and his investment firm, Cascade Investments, are the largest farmland owner in the U.S. He has acquired around 24,000 acres of farmland in Nebraska, his second largest amount of acreage in any given state. Not only does he own the farmland, but he owns the water rights. Think about that. Think about that. And don't discredit it just because it's a conspiracy. Here we go. The farmers are incentivized by the U.S. government to plant certain crops, and by doing so, they get to do what they love and what they know. But what they don't know is the truth behind the genetically modified seed oils and the false commodities that they inject into our food supply and our bodies every couple of hours. Do you know what's in your food? The truth might shock you. Our food supply is being hijacked and nutritional value is being compromised. And the worst part, you're paying the price. I come from Texas, from a family of farmers who survived the Dust Bowl of the 1930s. You can Google the Dust Bowl if you want. I've spent my life studying behavioral analysis and can quickly dissect the situation. I know how to operate farming equipment and perform data analysis. I've worked in several big tech startups, but now my goal is to expose the industrial food complex for what it truly is. One of the most shocking revelations I've uncovered is the use of canola oil in our food. Canola is derived from rapeseed, which was banned for human consumption in 1956 due to high levels of uric acid. In the 1970s, lab developed strains of rapeseed with low levels of uric acid and found ways to remove the bitterness. Canola oil is now one of the most commonly used ingredients in America's processed food, I would say global processed food, despite being known to cause cancer, catalyze unhealthy brain function, heart disease, liver problems, hypertension, strokes, and stunted growth in children. Now, if you think this is bullshit, this is the time to start looking into this. What's even more alarming is that most of these problems are not immediate, but caused by accumulation. Canola oil is used in almost every processed food we consume, and most restaurants use it to fry and cook their food, and the FDA is allowing it. But canola is just the tip of the iceberg. Most Americans eat GMOs without even knowing it. 90% of the American canola, soy, sugar, and wheat are at least 90% genetically modified. And the top 5 most common ingredients in processed foods are all salts. The next 2, dextrose and corn syrup, are the most used in food and beverages. Both are derived from corn that is genetically modified. Every single American alive eats GMOs every day. And what about the current beef shortage? It is not a shortage at all. There are plenty of cattle, but all the processors are buying fewer cattle, thus not supplying the food chain as much beef, chicken, and pork as we have had access to in the past. This is by design. Billionaires and corporations hide with shell companies. Cascade Investment is one of Billy G's. You don't know who that is. You can figure it out. It rhymes with Kate's. Companies he uses to buy and hide his purchases and his own corporate dealings. He owns several companies that are hard to track and identify just because he can use the global corporate system that has a lobbying arm that has close ties to all of our lawmakers. It's time to take control of our food supply and demand transparency. Ask yourself how many processed foods you eat in a week. This means anything that comes in a package, can, or a bottle. Then ask yourself how often you eat out a week. The truth is, most of us are consuming more GMOs than we realize, and it's time to demand better and hold these corporations accountable. Let's take back our health and our food supply. The Artificial Food Supply of America, a look into the dangers. This is a quote from it. Now, the food industry has gone a massive transformation in recent years with the advent of genetically modified foods, also known as GM or GMO foods. While the purpose of genetically modifying crops was initially to make them more resistant to pests and drought, the practice has since been expanded to enhance their nutritional value and improve their aesthetic appeal. However, despite the promise of benefits, many experts warned that the widespread use of GMOs could have severe health and environmental consequences. Toxicity is the primary concern when it comes to GM foods. The FDA, the regulatory agency responsible for ensuring the safety of food and drugs in the US, maintains that all GM foods on the market are safe for human consumption. However, many studies suggest otherwise. A UK study by Dr. Stanley Owen and Arpad Pustai found that rats fed GM potatoes showed signs of gastrointestinal tract issues caused by transgene found in the GM potato. Multiple studies have also linked GM foods to allergies, antibiotic resistance, and immunosuppression. Pesticides and herbicides are another issue associated with GMO foods. They are used to eliminate insects and weeds, producing a faster and more cost-efficient crop yield. Monsanto's Roundup, the most popular herbicide, contains the carcinogens, oxidized petroleum residues, arsenic, and glyphosate. While the plants are immune to the herbicide, humans are not. The active ingredient glyphosate is found in most of the foods we eat, as well as clothing, non-organic cotton products, and even drinking water. Glyphosate has been linked to multiple diseases, including cancer, kidney disease, intestinal dysfunction, and non-Hodgkin lymphoma. One of the most significant effects of GMOs on human health is their link to obesity. It's kind of funny that we're suffering from an obesity epidemic right now. You think the pandemic was bad? Look around you. Researchers found that rats fed GE corn grew a minimum of 10% more fat and were significantly hungrier than the control group. The link between GMOs and obesity is easily observed by looking at the obesity in rats, US versus countries that do not use GMOs. I did a video about the obesity of rat chow to get them fat compared to the American standard diet. It's uncanny. I'll post the video in the link below. Americans are obese, and 75% of Americans are overweight. In France, where GMO cultivation is banned, the obesity rate is only 10%, with 40% of the population overweight. Another significant issue associated with GM foods is cross-contamination. Once you start using GM seeds, the DNA will be shared with all natural seeds and will take over. Cross-contamination of GM plants and natural plants is irreversible, and even foods that claim to be non-GMO and organic have the potential to contain GMOs. Most countries that have import bans on GMOs have a total ban on imports from that country of that specific crop, non-GMO or not, to prevent contamination. The concentration of power in the food industry has led to a lack of transparency, funny enough, regarding the use of genetically modified organisms in food. The new labeling law, which requires companies to label products containing GMOs, is lacking in transparency. Instead of requiring companies to print the GE label on packaging, they are allowed to place a QR code that links to a website where customers can find more information. This creates a barrier of transparency, as many consumers may not have access to a QR scanner and may not take the time to scan the specs of the products they buy. Despite the growing concern about GM foods, the labeling of such foods was not required in the US until 2022. While the National Bioengineered Food Disclosure Standard now requires companies to disclose GMO ingredients on their packaging, there are still transparency issues with the labeling of such ingredients. In 2022, with very little press or public awareness, the GMO labeling in the US was changed to bioengineered. It is now a barcode that is on the packaging in the supermarket that you have to scan, and the standard disclosure is the length of the terms of services agreements of Facebook or TikTok. In conclusion, the widespread use of GM foods poses significant health and environmental risks that cannot be ignored. The effects of GMOs on human health, cross-contamination, and lack of transparency in labeling are all serious issues that need to be addressed. It is crucial to preserve the natural state of the earth. We've been saying that. And the nutritional value of fruits and vegetables by avoiding the use of engineered crops that have only been approved for human consumption for a little over 20 years. The world's food supply is controlled by just a handful of companies, and the concentration of power in the industry has increased over time. In the United States, less than 1% of the population is employed in agriculture, and most of the food sold in the country is controlled by a few large corporations. Sound familiar? The food cartel exercises a significant degree of control over domestic agricultural economies, especially in the processed industries. This includes milling and packaging, slaughtering industries, which are controlled by a few large companies. For example, in the case of grains and soybeans, the top 4 millers controlled 41% of the industry in 1979. They now control 92%. In addition, 4 of the 6 leading grain cartel companies own 64% of America's grain elevator storage capacity, which means that farmers must sell their grain to these companies, and these firms collude to set the price to the farmer at the lowest possible level. You see where this is going? The food cartel's power must be broken, as they control the supply of raw materials, and above all, food. The food cartel apparently seeks to turn back the clock of history and reduce mankind from the 7 billion population it currently enjoys to the state of a few hundred million semi-literate souls scratching out a bare existence. The full truth about the food cartel must be known, and the extreme globalization of the food chain must be eliminated. Nations have been forced into dependence on food from hundreds and thousands of miles away, and this is not sustainable in the long term. In conclusion, the food industry's concentration of power has led to a lack of transparency and control over the world's food supply. The top seed companies account for 2/3 of the global proprietary seed market, and the top 3 seed companies control 65% of the proprietary maize, the corn, seed market worldwide. And over half of the proprietary soybean seed market. The food cartel exercises significant control over the domestic agriculture economies of nations, and the extreme globalization of the food chain must be eliminated to ensure food security in the long term. In today's society, many people are asking the question of what they can do to prepare for withstand the coming crisis. As someone who has studied and lived through various social and global crises, I have a simple answer. Start living as your grandparents did. Interesting. My grandparents were pioneering people who survived the Dust Bowl, gold confiscation, 2 world wars, and the Great Depression. They didn't have cash riches, but they had something much more valuable, true wealth. They were able to live off the land and feed their families with a generational set of skills that were passed down to them. Farming and ranching is a tough life that takes strength and a spirit that most don't understand. But despite the challenges, the work and determination of my grandparents and earlier ancestors can still be seen in modern-day farmers and ranchers. They may have modern equipment and luxuries, but their grit and strength must now evolve into a form of information warfare. It is time for us to take a step back, evaluate our daily consumption decisions, and start making changes that create an awareness that empowers us. By putting an art to the act of food growth and preparation, we can develop for what I call food intelligence. # food intelligence. We are living in a game that we did not realize that had been designed for us. Our non-fitness standards, mind, body, and spirit, have become our new fitness standards. We are being profiled in a way that has never been achieved before, and much of the data mining and analysis being done on a personal level is a new frontier. Our food consumption in the United States is killing us. And it's been done with world-class marketing and the power of the fiat dollar. The expert data mining and analysis, our government, global corporations, and investment firms are designing this form of game theory. We are being profiled by our food consumption and our desire for taste, convenience, and comfort. As we try to survive, the new survival guide relies on mass consumption of processed food and nutrient-weak food, operating together with a pharmaceutical industry that keeps designing and pumping out medicines and pills that create dependency and addiction, rather than a cure that leads to better health. With this data-driven preference form of living, our health industry has become reactive rather than proactive. So many levels is this hitting. We have moved into the digital and virtual world and willingly inserted a form of surveillance into our personal property. We carry smartphones that are transmitting who we are every second of every day, creating a profile about us that knows us better than we know ourselves. Our homes have become broadcast networks of all our personal lives. This type of lifestyle has allowed us to drown out our suffering and gives us a false sense of empowerment and luxury, all in the name of convenience and comfort. As we create data with every step we take, we are being profiled in a way that is not fully understood and has never been achieved before. Most of the AI algorithms being used are front-running and any decision-making abilities of the engineers and scientists that created them. The smart grid we are participating in has created an information cloud around us and is monetized and weaponized to create tools that shape our environment, our thoughts, and our emotions. But now we as a society are not allowed to say anything. There is no angle available to use to try to inform others that there is an issue. All information has become controlled and weaponized. You are a game character in a game you didn't choose to play, but you were snatched out of your current reality and formulated to be led down a path which was created a false reality. It's time to take a step back and find your truth. It's time to get agitated for the right reasons. It's time to fight for your mind. It's time to fight for your body and your eternal spirit. The Beef Initiative was created to battle this form of evil and modern-day slavery. We are laying a foundation of truth and providing a new beacon of light. We are decentralized and have an amazing set of tools and mindsets. There is a new talent stack and brain trust, and we are incubating a new way of life, a new way to live in freedom, integrity, and sovereignty. To seek truth requires one to ask the right questions. Those void of truth never ask about anything because their ego and arrogance prevent them from doing so. The world is in a state of flux, and it's important to acknowledge that we're facing challenges on a scale we've never experienced before. The old ways of living and thinking are no longer sustainable, and it's time to start thinking about new approaches to living and thriving in this world. It's time to start making changes to our daily consumption habits and to create an awareness that empowers us. We need to start putting art into the act of food growth and preparation, and this is what I call #food intelligence. The Beef Initiative was created to battle this form of evil and modern-day slavery. We are moving forward in a way most people can't understand. We are laying a foundation of truth, providing a new beacon of light. We are decentralized, and we have an amazing set of tools. I think I read that already. Sorry, guys. The global food cartels, in collaboration with other global corporations, have a plan in motion, which they are executing at lightning speed. This plan is called stakeholder capitalism, which will design human capital bond markets. Once these markets have been created, they will engineer new hedge funds, and we will be placed into particular hedge fund based on our food consumption and daily content. The food cartels will know us better than we know ourselves. We are willing participants in this chess game. It's time we stop playing checkers and learn how to play chess. I don't write any of this form of viewpoint of judgment. All my work and the intelligence research of my team come from a foundation of truth and compassion. I have people in my own family who suffer from diabetes, obesity, and hypertension, just to name a few diet-associated medical conditions. I myself live a very intentional life of awareness, education, and have a sense of agency that allows me to make informed decisions. I place my consumption in a very protective box so that no one is allowed to infiltrate. I protect it with my life because I know it's a matter of life or death. The deeper I began to understand the macro picture, the more I wanted to know and figure out. It is now my responsibility to spread the word. Do not let cognitive dissonance destroy your mind, body, and spirit anymore. Be okay with living with truth in food. It will empower you and allow you to become or maintain the person God intended you to be. So what can you do? First off, go shake your rancher's hand. If you do not have a local rancher, then you can find one through Beef Initiative Portal. It is a gateway that will allow you to establish a relationship with those who fight each day to feed you. They steward our land and they steward our nutrition just as our ancestors did. We have to put the power in the hands of true experts of food intelligence. Food intelligence is not complicated. It's quite easy, especially after you begin to understand the engineering and marketing behind the industrial food complex and its intentions. This first report was a broad and general outline to give you an understanding of the history, the current actions taking place, and where our food is going. Do not allow them to steal the nutrients out of your life or your children's. Henry Kissinger once said, "Control oil and you control nations. Control food and you control people." Who controls the food supply controls the people. Who controls the energy can control whole continents. Who controls money can control the world. It can be overwhelming to think about the enormity of the issue at hand, but remember, change always starts with one small step. Start by taking control of your own food and nutrition, by being mindful of what you put in your body. You can take the first step towards protecting your health and the health of your loved ones. Take time to educate yourself on the foods you are consuming. Read labels, do research on the companies that produce the food you eat. Support local farmers and markets that provide fresh, organic, and non-GMO produce. It is also important to share your knowledge with others. Start conversations with your friends and family about the importance of healthy eating and the impact of the food industry on our health and our environment. Spread awareness through social media or by volunteering in local organizations that focus on sustainable food systems. So that is a letter. And the author of that newsletter, which I wholeheartedly agree with, it's pretty shocking. I read this book, Metabolical. It says the same thing. What they're doing to our food supply, how they're regulating it, who's protecting you, and what the takeaway from this, you have the power. The truth is out there. It's right in front of our faces. And whether you believe this or believe that, if you don't believe it, start looking into it because your life depends on it. So my message is to share this message. All the conversations I've had with people about what can we do to do that. The time for silence is no more. I will not be silent. I will not watch people destroy their health with being unaware of the poison they're putting in their bodies. So I will stand up. I will try and help one person. Hopefully that person is you. If you've decided to listen to this throughout, dissect it. Take away anything you can and start putting it into practice. I'm blessed because I came into my own health, in my 40s, and I've reversed everything that I had wrong with me, and it's very powerful. And I know I'm animal based. My diet lately has been very carnivore. That's not what it's about, whether you agree with it or not. It's about understanding what they say might not be what is the best thing for you. So that newsletter was from Dr. Robert Malone. If you know who he is, you know who he is. If you don't, Google him. Is he a heretic? Is he a zealot? I would, in my opinion, I would say he's a very, very intelligent man that is standing up for you and me in ways that probably have, cost him dearly, but he still continues. And for him to start talking about food, which also Russell Brand just had a great interview. I'm going to post some interviews below about the problems with processed food. Read the book Metabolical. Leave a comment below. Let me know. Hopefully you stayed to the end of this because that newsletter changed my life. And this is what I've been preaching for a long time. Take the power back. Stay strong.